Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Furman with Libbey Tableware. When you hear the words sparkling wine, what comes to mind? If you're like most people, you probably think of champagne. And that's understandable, especially since champagne until recently was the #1 most popular sparkling wine in the world. Now Champagne comes from a very tiny region in northern France called Champagne. And in this tiny region, there are over 16,000 growers and over 300 vineyards that all they do is produce champagne. But now, as of around 2010, 2011, the #1 wine, not only in America, but also pretty much worldwide, is now Prosecco. There are more bottles sold of Prosecco than French champagne and Cava combined. So today, I want to talk about the 4 most popular sparkling wines, which we have here: a Champagne, a Cava, a Prosecco, and an Asti. And I'll talk about 4 of our top glasses in our Reserve by Libbey Glassware collection, which we have our Revere flute, our Prism flute, our Renaissance flute, and our 8-ounce contour flute. Now you may be thinking, why so many glasses for sparkling wines? Well, there's actually a reason for that, and it has more to do with the production of the wine and less to do with the wines themselves. And I'll explain in a minute. So let's start with our first 2 sparkling wines, our Champagne and Cava. Now, most of us are very familiar with champagne. We associate it with, great celebrations such as New Year's Eve, Mother's Day, graduations. And champagne is usually produced in cooler climates. So that means it's going to give off notes and flavors of fruits like pear and apple, and sometimes even autolytic characteristics such as toast and biscuity flavors. And although some people confuse champagne as being a grape varietal, it's actually a blend of 3 different grapes: Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Pinot Meunier, 2 reds and a white. So now let's move on to our Cava. Cavas are Spanish sparkling wines, and they originate from the Penedès region in Spain, which is a little bit warmer climate than Champagne region in France. So Cavas tend to give off flavors of more citrus fruits, such as lemons and limes, and sometimes nutty flavors like almonds. But if a Cava ages well, it can actually take on secondary flavors such as fig and hazelnut. So now, even though these 2 wines, Champagne and Cava, have very different flavor and aromatic characteristics, they both share the same production method. And the production method used to make these 2 wines is called the traditional bottle method. So in a nutshell, the second fermentation of these wines actually happens inside a wine bottle. Now, unlike regular wines, when they go through the fermentation process, the CO2 gases, or carbon dioxide, if you will, are allowed to escape. But when we make sparkling wines, we want to keep that carbon dioxide. We want to capture it and keep it in the bottle, because it's the carbon dioxide that makes that beautiful effervescence of the sparkling wines and the fun bubbles that we associate and love about sparkling wines. Now, during this traditional bottle method, the carbon dioxide actually dissolves into the liquid, into the wine. And the more the bottle, the fermentation vessel, sits and ages, the more carbon dioxide saturates that wine. And when this happens, it turns the wine and gives the wine very tiny, small little bubbles. Now, these tiny bubbles are very important because the small, tiny bubbles create what we call that very fine, beautiful mousse, or froth, if you will, that's on the top of the liquid in our glass when we drink it. And also these tiny bubbles create a very fine texture in the wines, as well as the finesse of the wine. So basically, the smaller the bubbles, the higher quality of the wine. And pretty much like everything else, the higher the quality of the wine means a higher price tag. But now here is where the importance of the glassware comes in. And this is why I recommend our beautiful, elegant Revere glass, our Revere flute for champagne. Because not only is it a beautiful, elegant glass to go with a very elegant sparkling wine, but also the smaller bubbles in these wines pretty much demand a glass that has a very narrow, fairly like cylinder bowl, as well as a tapered, narrow rim at the top. Because what this does is this allows those beautiful bubbles to vertically rise the top of the glass. And also it prevents the fizz in the effervescence from fading out. So now with cava, here I recommend our prism glass. Now, similar to our Revere flute, the prism is, of course, beautiful and elegant, and it too has a narrow bowl to allow, again, those bubbles to rise up to the top and not fizzle out too quickly. So now let's move on to our Prosecco and our Asti wines. The Prosecco and Asti are sparkling wines that originate from the northern region in Italy. And both of these wines are very aromatic wines with intense fruity flavors. But unlike champagne and cava, they are produced in a totally different method rather than the bottle method. These two are produced by what we call the tank method. They're produced, the second fermentation with these wines happens in a very large steel tank, or steel vessel, if you will. And the larger the tank means the larger the surface area of the wine. And with a larger surface area means the carbon dioxide is not going to dissolve as quickly or as intensely as it does with the cava or the champagne. So the wines give off larger bubbles than a cava or a champagne. And with these larger bubbles, they don't fizzle out as quickly as the smaller bubbles do. So in turn, you don't necessarily need to have the long, narrow bowl in the glass. Although you certainly can use a beautiful flute. In fact, I love to recommend our 8-ounce contour glass for Prosecco. But for Asti, I always like to recommend a coupe glass. And of course, here at Libbey, we have many beautiful coupe glasses. Especially now with coupe glasses being so popular, these glasses you can use not only with Asti sparkling wines, but you can use them with Moscato d'Asti or Prosecco, even Braccetto wines. And for those of you who are not familiar with a Braccetto wine, a Braccetto is an Italian red sparkling wine that is just delicious, giving off really rich fruits or flavors of raspberry and cherry. And Braccetto wines, Proseccos, and Astis are much more affordable than the cavas and the champagnes. Probably why Prosecco wines are the most popular sparkling wines now in the world. So cheers, everyone. Follow me next time when I'll be discussing the various white wine glasses and why some white wines don't necessarily need to be served in a white wine glass. Bye for now.